Shane slammed the phone down, sneering, "Don't call me again," while I sat beside Ethan's hospital bed, praying he'd survive the night alone. The heart monitor beeped slow and steady, but every sound felt like it echoed inside my skull. I stared at the consent form in front of me, pen trembling in my hand. Shane should have been here. He promised he would be. Instead, it was just me and Ethan, pale under the hospital lights, looking so small against the big white sheets. A nurse with kind eyes hovered nearby, pretending not to notice how badly my fingers shook. I squeezed the pen tighter and signed. The second my name hit the paper, something inside me cracked. I slid the form across the table and heard the faint shuffle of the nurse picking it up. She whispered, "You're doing great, Mom," like she could see the storm inside me. I didn't answer. I couldn't. Shane's last words rang in my ears, sneering and final. "Don't call me again." 3 hours earlier, when I'd called to tell him Ethan was being prepped for surgery, he'd been at some rooftop party, slurring half his words, laughing like my call was an inconvenience. "You worry too much," he'd said, right before hanging up. Now I sat there alone, watching our son's tiny chest rise and fall. The smell of antiseptic filled the room, sharp and cold. I pulled the scratchy hospital blanket tighter around me and blinked hard, fighting the sting behind my eyes. I thought back to the day Shane and I signed the divorce papers. A full year ago now. He'd barely looked at me, more worried about his next weekend trip than the ink drying between us. Still, he had sworn one thing, voice slick and serious. "No matter what happens, Marissa, I'll always be there for Ethan. Always." I should have known better. I shifted in my chair, every muscle tight with grief and anger. I pulled out my phone, thumb hovering over Shane's contact. No. I slipped the phone back into my bag. No more begging, no more giving him chances he hadn't earned. As I watched Ethan sleep, his small hand twitching once beneath the sheets, I made a quiet promise right there, in that sterile humming room. Shane had made his choice. Now I would make mine. And he wouldn't see it coming. I didn't sleep that night. The nurses moved in and out, checking Ethan's vitals, adjusting machines, whispering updates. I sat rigid in the corner chair, the thin blanket useless against the hospital chill. At dawn, Dr. Serrano came in, her sneakers squeaking slightly on the polished floor. She gave me a tight smile, the kind that meant no promises. She pulled up a stool beside Ethan's bed and began explaining the risks. Her voice was calm, but every word hit like a hammer. "His vitals are stable now," she said, "but we're still not out of the woods. The next 24 hours are critical." I nodded because words were too heavy in my throat. Out of the corner of my eye, I caught my reflection in the dark window. Pale, hollow-eyed, a stranger in wrinkled scrubs. My hands moved automatically, smoothing Ethan's hair back from his forehead. His skin felt hot and dry under my fingertips. He didn't stir. By noon, Aunt Rita arrived, clutching a giant thermos of black coffee and a tote bag stuffed with snacks and crossword puzzles. Her eyes scanned the room fast, landing on me. "Where's Shane?" she asked, keeping her voice low. I shook my head once. That was all she needed. Rita's mouth tightened into a thin, angry line. She set the thermos down with a soft thud. "Good," she muttered. Less distraction. Later, when Ethan was finally transferred out of the ICU and into a quieter private room, Rita pulled a battered manila folder from her tote. "Been thinking about this for a while," she said, flipping it open. "Thought you might want it." Inside were printouts, screenshots of Shane's party pictures posted the night Ethan went under the knife, bottles clinking. Shane, red-faced and sweaty, posing with strangers. Another page showed texts Shane had sent Aunt Rita. "Busy tonight. Can't deal with Marissa's drama. Kid'll be fine. They always are." I stared at the pages, my hands going clammy. "This isn't just bad parenting," Rita said, voice rough. "It's neglect. You need to protect yourself. And Ethan." I pressed the folder closed with shaking fingers. Rita was right. I needed to be ready. Because deep down, I knew Shane wasn't done wrecking things yet. The manila folder felt heavier than it should have. I tucked it into my hospital bag without a word, the corner poking against my side like a warning. Rita gave my shoulder a squeeze before heading out to get some real food. I stayed behind, watching Ethan breathe slow and steady in the dim afternoon light. The soft whoosh of the ventilator, the faint beep of monitors, it all wrapped around me, thick and suffocating. I pulled out my phone and scrolled back through old texts from Shane. Promises he never kept. Don't worry, Marissa, Ethan is my world too. We'll always show up for him, no matter what. Lie after lie after lie. The hospital room door creaked open, and a nurse stepped in to check Ethan's IV. She gave me a kind smile, the kind that cracked me open even more. I looked away, pretending to be busy adjusting Ethan's blanket. That night, while Ethan slept, I opened my laptop and started the folder. I named it simply Shane Evidence. Screenshots, receipts, social media posts, it all went in. I even added the divorce decree, the one line that might save us both someday. In the event of parental neglect, emergency custody decisions default to the primary caregiver. Me. Shane probably forgot it even existed. He never read the fine print. The folder grew bigger with every click. Photos of Shane in Vegas 3 days after Ethan's diagnosis. Bank records showing money blown on bottle service while I fought insurance battles alone. A witness statement from the hospital volunteer who noticed Shane no-showed during Ethan's surgery prep. I organized it all, labeling each file by date and event, not because I wanted to use it, but because deep down I knew someday I might have to. When I finally closed the laptop, the clock on the wall said 2:13 a.m. I wiped my eyes with the sleeve of my sweatshirt, the fabric scratchy against my skin. Ethan shifted in his bed, letting out a soft, breathy sigh. I stood up and crossed the room, resting my hand lightly on his. "You're gonna be okay," I whispered. "I'm gonna make sure of it." Outside, the hospital corridor buzzed faintly with the sound of night shift nurses changing posts. Inside, I made another quiet promise to myself. Next time Shane needed something, he'd find the door locked. Ethan came home 2 weeks later, frail but grinning, clutching a stuffed tiger the hospital staff gave him. The house smelled like lemon cleaner and fresh laundry. Rita's doing. We settled into a rhythm fast. Physical therapy appointments, medication schedules, schoolwork when Ethan felt up to it. Shane didn't call, didn't text, not even once. I found myself staring at my phone some nights, half expecting some sorry excuse or half-hearted apology to pop up. It never did. Instead, life moved forward without him. Slowly, painfully, but forward. 3 months passed. The trees outside the house shed their leaves. Ethan's hair grew back in softer, lighter waves. Then, one rainy Thursday afternoon, my phone buzzed. Unknown number. I almost ignored it. Almost. Instead, I answered, pressing the phone to my ear with a wet dish towel still clutched in my other hand. A hollow, rasping voice croaked my name. "Marissa, it's Shane." My heart didn't skip a beat. It didn't even flinch. "What do you want?" I asked flatly, drying my hands on my jeans. He coughed hard, voice thin and raw. "I'm sick. It's bad. Autoimmune. They say I can't work anymore. Bills are piling up. He broke off, wheezing into the phone. I waited. "I need help," he said finally, voice cracking like dry wood. "Please, Marissa, I got no one else." I stood there in the kitchen, the rain tapping against the windows like fingers drumming on a table. I should have felt something. Pity, anger, fear. But all I felt was a strange, cold clarity. I leaned back against the counter, the cool marble pressing into my spine. "How much?" I asked, my voice even. Shane sucked in a wet breath. $20,000. He said it fast, like maybe if he spat it out quick enough it would hurt less. $20,000, Marissa. "I'm desperate. Please. I'll pay you back. I swear." I closed my eyes for a beat, then opened them, staring out at the rain-blurred world. He had no idea. No idea what was coming next. I didn't say yes. I didn't say no either. Instead, I said, "Meet me tomorrow at O'Grady's Diner. Noon." Shane agreed so fast it was pathetic. I hung up before he could spit out any more promises. All night, I barely slept. I packed Ethan's lunch, reviewed his meds, double-checked the paperwork I'd started months ago. By morning, my body moved on autopilot. Strong coffee, clean jeans, black sweater, no makeup, no jewelry, nothing Shane could mistake for weakness. O'Grady smelled like burnt bacon and desperation. The rain had stopped, but left everything slick and gray. I slid into a booth by the window, my heart pounding a slow, deliberate rhythm against my ribs. Shane limped in 10 minutes late. He looked wrecked, gaunt face, gray skin, clothes hanging loose like they belonged to someone else. For a split second, the memory of the man he used to be, the man who laughed too loud and loved too recklessly, flashed through me. Then it was gone. He slumped into the seat across from me, his hands trembling as he fumbled with the menu. He didn't order, just stared at me with those bloodshot eyes. "Marissa," he rasped. "You look good." I said nothing. He leaned closer, his voice dropping low. "I messed up. I know. But I'm trying to fix things. I just need some time. Some help. 20 grand's nothing to you now, right? Come on? For old time's sake. For Ethan." The mention of Ethan lit a fuse inside me. I kept my face blank. Shane kept talking, filling the space between us with desperate words. Bad luck. The doctors. The layoffs. The economy. Everyone else's fault but his. I let him pour it all out, nodding slowly like maybe, just maybe, he was getting through. When he finally slumped back, exhausted from the effort, I reached into my bag. His eyes lit up when he saw the thick packet I pulled out. Money, he probably thought. Salvation. I slid it across the table. Shane ripped it open, hands shaking. Inside were court documents, official notice that I'd filed for full custody, termination of shared financial obligations, a clean, legal severance. Shane stared at the papers, mouth working like a stranded fish. His face crumbled in slow, silent horror. He finally looked up at me, voice breaking. "Marissa, what is this?" I smiled once, small and tired. "Justice." Shane shoved the papers back at me like they were burning his skin. "You can't do this," he hissed, voice low and shaking. I didn't flinch, just sipped my coffee, bitter and lukewarm. "You already did," I said calmly. "You made your choices, Shane. Now you get the consequences." He looked around the diner like someone might swoop in and save him. But the handful of people hunched over their pancakes, and coffee didn't even glance our way. It was just him. And me. And the wreckage he built. "You don't get it," he said, his voice rising. "I'm sick. I'm gonna lose everything." "You already lost everything," I said. "You just didn't notice until you needed something." Shane gripped the edge of the table like it might keep him from slipping under. "You're heartless," he said, eyes gleaming with unshed tears. "You always were. Cold as ice." I sat back, arms crossed. Funny. I used to cry myself sick, thinking he didn't love me enough, wondering what was wrong with me. Turns out, I was just the only adult in the room. I slid another paper across to him, a typed inventory of every missed visitation, every party photo, every receipt from nights he claimed he was working late. "This is what the judge saw," I said. "This is why Ethan is mine, legally and forever, and why you're nothing but a name on a birth certificate now." Shane stared down at the paper pile like it might bite him. His shoulders sagged, his hands shook harder. He finally rasped, "What about me? What am I supposed to do?" I didn't answer right away. I looked past him, out the rain-smeared window, where the world carried on without caring one damn bit about Shane Calloway's latest sob story. "You figure it out," I said, standing up and pulling my bag over my shoulder, the way I had to. Alone. I walked away from that booth without looking back, the bell over the diner door jangling behind me. For the first time in years, the air outside tasted clean. Like freedom. The rain had stopped, but the ground was still slick and shining under the gray sky. I stood by my car for a minute, keys clutched in my hand, feeling the adrenaline hum low and mean in my blood. Inside the diner, Shane was still slumped over the table, motionless. I didn't feel guilty, not one damn bit. I climbed into the car and pulled out my phone, tapping out a quick text to Aunt Rita. "It's done." I hit send and tossed the phone onto the passenger seat. As I drove home, the city blurred past. Shops, gas stations, battered billboards. Familiar, but distant. I turned up the radio, letting the thrum of guitar and drums drown out the voice in my head. The voice that whispered, "He's not finished yet," because Shane wasn't the type to lose quietly. I knew him too well for that. Sure enough, by the time I pulled into the driveway, my phone was lighting up like a firecracker. 7 missed calls, 3 new voicemails, all Shane. I sat there for a second, engine ticking as it cooled, watching the screen flicker. I didn't listen. I didn't need to. I already knew the script. Begging, bargaining, blaming. Shane only had 3 gears. Instead, I grabbed my bag and headed inside. Ethan was on the couch, curled up with his Switch, a half-empty bowl of popcorn balanced on his knees. He looked up and smiled, the kind of easy, genuine smile that used to break me in half when I worried I couldn't give him enough. "Hey, Mom," he said, voice a little hoarse but strong. "Hey, buddy," I said, ruffling his hair. I moved through the house, checking locks, double-checking them. Then I pulled the curtain aside and scanned the street. Empty. For now. Shane was out there somewhere, spiraling. And something told me he wasn't about to go down without trying to drag me with him. I just didn't know yet what his next move would be. But I was ready. Shane's next move came 2 days later, wrapped in a manila envelope and shoved into my mailbox. I found it when I got home from Ethan's therapy appointment, still juggling his crutches and my grocery bags. No return address, just my name, scrawled in angry, familiar handwriting. I carried it inside, dumped the groceries on the counter, and sliced it open with the nearest steak knife. Inside was a letter, a handwritten one. The words slanted and shaky, like he'd been gripping the pen too hard. "Marissa, if you won't help me, maybe the world will. People deserve to know what kind of mother you really are. You're not as perfect as you think. You're cold, controlling, ruthless. I kept your secrets all these years, but maybe it's time the truth came out. Fix this, or I will." Shane. I stood there, staring at the page, the blood draining from my face, not because he had anything real on me, but because I knew exactly what he was trying to do. Smear campaign. Emotional blackmail. Shane's favorite hits. I grabbed my laptop, heart pounding, and pulled up Facebook. Sure enough, there it was. A brand new post on his page. "Some people pretend to be saints. Don't be fooled. Even nurses can be heartless monsters behind closed doors. Hashtag family first. Hashtag betrayed. No names. Just enough to make people wonder. Enough to hurt if I let it." I slammed the laptop shut, jaw tight. Shane wanted a war, fine. But I wouldn't fight it on his terms. I walked to the closet and pulled down the locked fireproof box Aunt Rita gave me after the divorce. Inside were certified copies of everything: custody papers, medical records, even therapist notes from Ethan's counselor. Every ugly truth documented. Every lie Shane ever told. Waiting. I tucked the box under my arm, grabbed my keys, and headed out the door. If Shane wanted a public spectacle, he was about to get one. But it wouldn't be the story he thought he was writing. It would be mine. And it would break him. Rita opened the door before I even knocked, like she'd been standing there waiting. One look at my face, and she stepped aside without a word. I dropped the fireproof box onto her kitchen table with a heavy thud. Rita raised an eyebrow. "He made his move, didn't he?" I nodded, pulling out the threatening letter and laying it flat between us. She scanned it once, her lips curling into a tight grimace. "Typical Shane," she muttered. "Blame you, blackmail you, beg you. He's nothing but a ghost throwing tantrums." Still, my hands trembled a little as I flipped open the box. "Help me," I said, voice lower than I meant. "I want everything lined up. I want this airtight." Rita's face softened for a second, then hardened right back up. "We'll bury him in paper cuts," she said, grabbing her laptop from the counter. For the next 2 hours, we built a wall around me and Ethan. Strong, tall, unbreakable. Screenshots of Shane's threats. Records of missed child support payments. Proof of his public drunkenness during Ethan's surgery. Affidavits from 2 of the hospital staff. Rita even pulled up a video from the hospital parking lot cameras. Shane stumbling into a cab while I sat signing emergency surgery consent forms alone. The proof stacked higher and higher, each file a small stone thrown back into the ocean Shane thought he controlled. By the time we finished, the fireproof box barely closed. Rita sat back in her chair, crossing her arms. "Let him try to come for you," she said, her voice like steel wrapped in velvet. "He'll get nothing but his own shame reflected back at him." I nodded once, slow and deliberate, because this wasn't just defense anymore. This was preparation. Shane had started this war. I was going to finish it. And when it ended, there wouldn't be a scrap of sympathy left for him to hide behind. The official court hearing was set for Friday morning. Plenty of time for Shane to make an even bigger fool of himself. I spent the days leading up to it staying invisible. No posts, no responses, no calls. Just silence. Rita and I polished the evidence file until it gleamed. Ethan stayed blissfully unaware, too busy mastering a new video game and arguing about bedtime. At night, after he fell asleep, I lay awake staring at the ceiling, rehearsing every possible outcome in my head. Shane showing up drunk. Shane throwing a tantrum. Shane trying to twist it all back on me. I pictured them all. Prepared for them all. The morning of the hearing, I dressed simply. Black blazer, navy slacks, flat shoes, hair pinned back. Professional. Unshakable. Rita picked me up in her old Subaru, the heater blasting because it was a bitter, gray morning. Neither of us spoke much on the drive. The courthouse smelled like old coffee and wet paper. I clutched the fireproof box tight as we rode the elevator up to the 3rd floor. Courtroom 3B. Family division. Shane was already there when we arrived, slouched low in a chair outside the courtroom doors. He looked even worse than he had at the diner. Pale, sweaty, jittery. When he spotted me, he pushed up out of the chair and stumbled toward me, voice loud and slurring the edges of his words. "Marissa, please. This is crazy. I didn't mean any of it. We can fix this. You don't have to do this." People turned to look. A bailiff started moving our way fast. Rita stepped between us without hesitation, her hand flat against his chest. "Back off, Shane," she said, her voice low and deadly. Shane's eyes darted around, desperate and wild. "You're making a mistake," he shouted. "You're ruining my life." The bailiff clamped a hand on his arm and steered him back toward his seat. I didn't say a word, didn't blink. I just walked past him, head high, heart hammering like a war drum in my chest. This wasn't fear. This was victory on the horizon. The judge entered briskly, robe swishing, glasses perched low on her nose. She scanned the room once, expression unreadable, then called us to order. I sat straight, palms flat on the table, while my lawyer, Mrs. Dalton, sharp as a scalpel, stood ready beside me. Shane's side? Just him and a public defender he probably scraped together at the last minute. The hearing started with formalities, names, case numbers, all blending into a dull buzz in my ears. But when Mrs. Dalton began laying out the evidence, everything sharpened. One photo at a time. One missed visitation logged. One bank record showing Shane draining funds during Ethan's hospital stay. The judge's face grew harder with each passing minute. Shane tried to interrupt once, slurring something about being a good dad, but the judge shut him down with a look so cold it could have frozen the whole room. Then came the social media posts, the screenshots of his rooftop parties the night of Ethan's surgery, the witness statements from the hospital, the videos of him stumbling into cabs, reeking of alcohol, while his son fought for his life. Shane slumped lower with every blow, sweat shining on his forehead. When it was his turn to speak, he mumbled about second chances and bad luck, voice cracking, face flushed. He blamed work stress, his health, me, never himself. The judge listened, stone-faced. When he finished rambling, she tapped her pen against the desk once, sharp and final. "I've seen enough," she said. "Parental neglect is not an accident. It's a choice, a pattern. And in this case, the pattern is abundantly clear." Shane blinked up at her, wide-eyed and small. She turned to me next, and for the first time that morning, her expression softened. "Ms. Marissa," she said, "you've demonstrated extraordinary commitment under impossible circumstances. Full legal custody is hereby granted. All prior financial and parental ties to Mr. Calloway are severed effective immediately." The gavel cracked down once, clean and sure. Case closed. Shane sagged forward, head in his hands, as the bailiff gently nudged him up to leave. I didn't watch him go. I only looked at Rita, who smiled at me through tears she didn't even bother to wipe away. It was over. I was free. Ethan was safe. Rita and I walked out of the courthouse into a world scrubbed clean by last night's rain. The sky was crisp blue, the sidewalks still damp and gleaming. I took a deep breath, the cold air slicing into my lungs, sharper and sweeter than anything I'd tasted in months. Rita looped her arm through mine, pulling me close. "You did it, kid," she said, voice rough with pride. I didn't answer. I just smiled, small and real, the kind that didn't hurt to wear anymore. At home, Ethan greeted me at the door, wearing his Superman hoodie and clutching a lopsided card he made himself. "Happy Mom Day," he said, shoving it into my hands, cheeks pink with excitement. I knelt down and hugged him, breathing in the warm, familiar scent of shampoo and crayons. My chest ached in the best way. Later that night, after dinner, we celebrated properly. Nothing fancy, just the two of us and Rita. Homemade pizza with too much cheese. A lopsided chocolate cake Ethan helped decorate, streaming old superhero cartoons until we all fell asleep on the couch in a tangle of blankets. It wasn't glamorous. It wasn't loud, but it was ours. I woke up sometime after midnight, stiff from the awkward angle but smiling anyway. Ethan's head was heavy against my shoulder, his breath soft and even. Rita snored quietly from the recliner, a half-empty glass of root beer still clutched in her hand. I tucked the blanket tighter around Ethan and shifted carefully so he wouldn't wake. Then I sat there in the dark, staring out the living room window at the wide, endless night. There were no flashing lights, no sirens, no pounding fists demanding second chances, just peace. Real, solid, earned peace. For the first time in a long, long time, I knew we were going to be okay. Not perfect, not painless, but free. And I had fought like hell to get us here. The peace lasted exactly 4 days. On the 5th, my phone buzzed just after breakfast. Unknown number. I let it go to voicemail without a second thought. When I checked the message, Shane's voice poured through the speaker, thin, frantic, almost unrecognizable. "Marissa, please, just alone, just enough to get back on my feet, for Ethan. I swear, I'll pay it back. I'm different now. Please." I stared at the phone in my hand, the sunlight pouring through the kitchen window, catching on the screen. Same Shane, same games, different excuse. I deleted the message, without a second listen. I thought that would be the end of it, but Shane didn't know when to quit. That night, as Ethan brushed his teeth and I folded laundry in the living room, another message came through. This time, a text. "You're heartless. You're teaching our son to be cold just like you. Congrats." I let out a slow breath, folding one more t-shirt before setting the phone down. The next message hit before I could walk away. "Please, just a few thousand. I'll disappear after. Promise." The desperation oozed off the screen. Shane wasn't just slipping. He was falling apart at the seams. I picked up the phone, my thumb hovering over the reply button for a long, heavy second. Then I typed 2 words. Not interested. I hit send. Blocked the number. Tossed the phone onto the couch. Ethan padded into the room, pajamas twisted sideways, a sleepy smile on his face. "Story time?" he asked, holding up a battered book we'd read 100 times. I ruffled his messy hair and sat down, pulling him close. Shane's voice faded into nothing. His desperation, his manipulations, his last-ditch threats, none of it mattered anymore. The door to our life was closed, bolted. Shane could claw at it all he wanted. He wasn't getting in. Not now. Not ever. The next morning started normal. Ethan was bouncing around the kitchen, tossing apples into a grocery bag while I packed his sneakers and a worn-out Spider-Man hoodie. We were heading to Rita's lake cabin for the weekend. No Wi-Fi, no drama, just breathing room. I zipped up the duffel bag, humming under my breath, when my phone buzzed on the counter. I glanced over, expecting a spam text or a weather alert. But the screen lit up with one subject line. Bold and urgent. Urgent. Curtis Miller. Legal action filed. My hands went cold. I wiped them on my jeans and picked up the phone, my thumb hesitating over the screen. Ethan crashed into my side, laughing, waving a packet of Pop-Tarts. I smiled, tight and distracted. "Go get your jacket, bud. We're almost ready." He darted off, and the second he disappeared down the hall, I tapped the message open. Lines of legal jargon blurred together at first. Petition, defamation, damages, emergency injunction. I blinked hard, reading again slower. Shane had filed a lawsuit against me, accusing me of emotional distress, parental alienation, and insult to injury, intentional financial harm. He was claiming I ruined his reputation, claiming I cost him jobs, friends, sympathy, claiming I was the villain. Rita's voice called from the front porch, sharp with urgency. "Marissa, you need to see this. Now." Still gripping the phone, I ran. Rita stood on the porch, face pale, her own phone held high. She turned the screen to me. A post, already viral, splattered across my neighborhood Facebook group. Shane's face. His sob story. Dozens of comments. Some sympathetic, some vicious, some demanding my side. The edges of my vision blurred. Ethan's small sneakers thumped across the hallway behind me. "Mom? What's wrong?" I shoved the phone into my pocket, plastering on a smile that barely held. "Nothing, baby. Let's finish packing, okay?" Inside, my stomach twisted into 1,000 knots. Shane had gone nuclear, and this time, he wasn't just clawing at me. He was aiming at everything I had left. I spent the drive to Rita's cabin, gripping the steering wheel so hard my knuckles ached. The trees blurred past, a green and gold smear against the window, but my mind was locked onto one thing: Shane's attack. He hadn't just filed a lawsuit, he'd gone public, dragged my name into the mud for everyone to see. Ethan sat in the back, humming along to some pop song, blissfully unaware that our lives were shifting again beneath our feet. When we finally pulled up the gravel driveway, Rita was already there, hauling groceries into the old cabin. She met my eyes over the hood of her car. One look, no words needed. She knew. She felt it too. Inside, after Ethan settled into the bunk room with his comic books, Rita set down 2 mugs of coffee and locked the front door. "What's the plan?" she asked, cutting straight through the buzzing panic inside me. I pulled out my laptop, the fireproof box, and a battered notebook full of handwritten dates, payments, and every little broken promise Shane ever made. "We counterattack," I said, flipping open the files. "No anger, no noise, just facts." Rita grinned, fierce and proud. "That's my girl." We spent hours building the case, each email, each receipt, another nail in Shane's coffin. By nightfall, the counters were littered with papers, and my inbox was loaded with drafted statements, screenshots, and a cease and desist letter ready to fire back. The final step came right before midnight. I drafted a single public post, short, clean, devastating. While some are busy rewriting history, I remain focused on protecting my son's future. Documents speak louder than rumors. Legal counsel has been engaged. Further statements will be made in court. I hovered over the post button, heart hammering. Then, with one sharp breath, I tapped it. The world didn't explode. No sirens, no chaos, just a low, steady buzz as the truth began to ripple outward. Cold, unstoppable. Shane wanted a war. He just got one. And this time, he wasn't facing the old Marissa, the one who begged, who forgave. He was facing the woman he created, the one who knew exactly how to win.